Hello and welcome. My name is Xander. Welcome to the ORM Mastery course, Level 1 for beginners. Following on from the previous tutorial, we now explore in this tutorial Django model field options. Just briefly, for anyone new to this playlist, this tutorial is part of a series of tutorials. You can find the link to the whole playlist in the video description. And then finally, before we start the tutorial, if you like this tutorial and would like to learn more, please check out our Django database ORM Mastery course on Udemy. The link to the course, which will always provide the best price, can be found in the video description. Course thumbnails may change over time, so please check out for Created by Very Academy. On the same resource I mentioned in the previous tutorial, where we looked at field types, you'll find at the top here, we have field options. And there's around about, 15 different field options here that can be utilized on multiple different types of field types. Now, do remember that some field types may have very specific attributes associated to the field type. So be careful of that. But generally what we're talking about here are kind of general field options that will be able to be applied on multiple different fields or field types. As the documentation says here, all of these are completely optional. So they are not mandatory, whereas some of the other field types you might find not mandatory, but there are some fields whereby you want to apply some of the default attributes. So like we did in the previous tutorial, at this level, I just want to show some more of the kind of popular options, or just explore some of the more popular field options. And then later in the course, we will be embedding a lot of these different options and field types in the course naturally. So don't worry about if you feel so we're kind of skipping things here. There will be plenty of time and occasions where we'll be utilizing different tools. Right, so let's first of all talk about null. Right, so if true, null will store empty values as null in the database. So the default is false. So it's important to understand that there are defaults already set. So these are just things that will be attached to our field types that we need to potentially kind of turn on or assign. So you can see by default, null is false. So what does that mean? So Django will store empty values as null in the database. However, the default is false. So what does that mean? Well, we finished the previous tutorial looking at the Django admin after we migrated our database to what you can see here. Now, let's just go ahead and just close the server, Control-C if you've not done that, and just open it up again in case you don't know how to do that. So let's take a look at adding some data into our database again. So let's go into the admin. So if you weren't too sure, that's the 127001 loopback :8000 then admin. I'm already logged in, so let's just go through the motions here. Let's log back in. So /admin, go to admin, and we're logged in. Right, so let's go to products, and that's the table that we've created. Add a new product, and let's just go ahead and not add anything in the product name. I press save, and it says here field is required. Okay, so I add something here, and then I don't add a name, age. Let's press save, and you can see that field is required. So by default, we're told from the documentation, that the null equals the default equals false. So essentially, it's telling us that each field potentially each field, we do actually have to add something into it. It is expecting something in the field. So that's why it isn't allowing us to save the data. So in actual fact, there's two options here. We have null and we have blank. Now, if you read here, it is kind of alluding to the fact that we should avoid using null on string-based fields, such as the char field, which we have, and the text field, which we haven't quite defined yet. So here we have blank then. So if we move over to blank, if true, the field is allowed to be blank. The default is false. So it's drawing to the fact that if we do have a Django field, which is predominantly a string-based field, then potentially we need to be utilizing blank. So let's just go ahead and apply this. So it looks like on a string field, we're going to be utilizing blank. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can see that the default is false. So that's the default option. So what we're going to need to do now is go into our field attributes here and then just add blank equals true. True. There we go, capital. Okay, so let me just move that out of the way so we can see everything. Okay, so that is now been assigned, blank equals true. So let's go back into our admin here and remember the blank equals true now. So let's just remove that. Let's go ahead and add an age. Let's press save. And you can now see that we saved. Now, what's interesting here is, well, there isn't a product name. So our DunderString method isn't returning anything at all because name hasn't been set. So it looks like we can do that. So that's something that potentially you want to consider. Now, null values or blank values in a database isn't necessarily good practice. So potentially we want to avoid that. And that's potentially why by default it's set to false, so that we have to and we are forced to insert data into that field. So something else you may utilize is the default option here. So the default value. So we can specify a default value for our field. So for example, if the user doesn't type anything in, then we just utilize the default value. So let's, for example, say default equals, and in this case, it's a string. So say, this is not good practice, but no name. Okay. So let's go back into our admin here. And then we'll go ahead and we're not going to include a product name again. Let's just change the age and then let's press save. And you can see here that it says the field is required. Now, the reason why that is because the default does not work with a character field, or at least it won't work until we've migrated. So let's go back and let's run our command, which was make migrations. And you can see now we've altered the field name on product. So let's go ahead now and migrate this. Run and migrate and make the changes. And let's go ahead now and do a Python run server. So run the server again. Let's go back in. Let's go ahead and go to products again. Let's go to add products. And you can notice here that no name is actually just being added automatically in the form. So that's the default name in this case. So let's go for age and let's go for save. And there we go. So it just utilizes the default name as the default entry for that field. So in actual fact, we didn't necessarily have to go through that process of migrations again, because the reason why this hasn't been set is because we've already made the changes. So previously where it didn't appear on a previous record, it's because the record's already been changed. We set it to blank and we went through that process to allow that. And then we made those changes. So it's not necessarily then being applied. So it looks like the default option is going to be applied, at least initially, when we build a new entry, when we build a new record. And it isn't necessarily it's going to be then referred back to when we update the data or when we have updated the data in an existing record. So let's take a look at some other field types. Now, we utilized the verbose name already. That was a previous tutorial in this section. And we will be utilizing primary key a little bit later when we start to define our own primary keys. So let's take a look at the HelpText, for example. So this is just something that you could apply, and this could be generated in other ways, but it's something that is included in Django. So let's take a quick look. So let's define some HelpText. I keep saying HelpText. Okay, it's getting late. Right, so let's go ahead and add some HelpText here, and then we'll say this is the HelpText. So where might this be used? Well, we have the Django admin open, and that's really where we're probably going to see it being utilized here. So let's go into add product, and you can see now we have some HelpText. So it gives us an indication of maybe what type of data we need to store or what are the requirements for this particular field. So this is data that can be extracted when you build your own forms, and you can potentially utilize it within your own forms to give further indication or instructions about entry to this particular form.